Welcome to Unlocking 10 Billion for Responsible Tech. This is part of the Responsible Tech highlighted sessions by Siegel Family Endowment. I'm the host for this room. My name is Jeff Ward, CEO and founder at Animiki Indigenous Technology. I run an Indigenous B Corp up in Canada. And today I'd like to introduce Lyel and Camille. Lyel Resner, visiting faculty at MIT. Lyel is the co-founder and managing partner of a new early-stage fund focused on backing technology companies that help people live more prosperous, healthy, and dignified lives. Drawing on deep experience across startups, education, and policy, he helps asset owners access high-potential, values-aligned innovation at the earliest stages, where capital can meaningfully shape both outcomes and direction. Camille, EIR at JS Capital, is a practical visionary and expert in governance and structural innovation focused on reimagining how capital can serve both financial and social objectives. As co-founder of Purpose, she developed the legal framework for perpetual purpose trusts, enabling private enterprises, community real estate projects, and fund managers to preserve their mission and raise aligned capital. She also founded Apiary, advising digital teams on scalable solutions for decentralized decision-making through community science and systems design. And with that, please help me welcome Camille and Lyel.
Thank you, Jeff. So just maybe a very quick temperature taking to see who's in the room. Can you please raise your hand if you are an LP? Hey, LPs. Hi. Can you please raise your hand if you are a GP? Can you please raise your hand if you are a for-profit or social enterprise founder? Cool. Hey, founders. If you are a nonprofit founder or executive? Cool. And any that I missed that someone just kind of wants to shout out? Media. Oh, we need media. Yeah, Impact Alpha's here. Awesome. Okay, super helpful. Okay, so Jeff mentioned I'm visiting faculty at MIT. I must concede I am like a fake academic. I moonlight as an academic. I'm like a founder. I'm operator, but I nevertheless am going to ask that you indulge the educator in me briefly for some table setting. So we're going to play a quick game called Fist to Five, and it works like this. I'm going to ask you a question, and you're going to put up a fist, which would be 0, like how prepared my hamstrings were for the hills of San Francisco, to 5 being how beautiful the Golden Gate Bridge looks in the shimmering morning light. Okay, so fist to 5. All right, so you're with me? Okay, so how positively would you say digital technology has impacted your life? Fist to 5. Put your hands super high. Super high. Take a look around the room. Super interesting. Yeah, we have a range. I'm seeing we're probably at, like, on average, it seems like we're maybe close to a 4. How positively, next question, how positively would you say digital technology has impacted society? Fist to 5. I see our first 1s, 2s mostly. Look around, we're a handful of 1s. So noticeably, like decidedly lower, right? Like I would say the average for the first one was above a 3, and the average for the second question was below a 3. How do you think my undergraduate computer science students at MIT answered this question? The answer to the first question was about a 3. And the answer to the second question was closer to a 1, 1.5 on average. And I've asked this question for 7 years, and I've seen it go down every single year. Why do we think that is? I think it's probably evident the technology ecosystem that we have created, I guess folks in this room to varying degrees, have led at least my students to believe that the last 15 years of technology innovation has not brought them closer to the type of society that they want to live in. And so when we think about responsible innovation and responsible tech, often we think about fairness and transparency and bias in algorithms. But I think it's important to frame it as much more than that. The technology that we build disproportionately defines how we live, work, and play. And the moment for when we think about responsible innovation, it's fundamentally thinking about, well, what type of society do we want to build? To the degree that folks in this room, either as LPs or investors or mostly on the capital side, founders, you're doing the right thing. You're out there, you're building. But for the capital folks in the room, I think our window for being able to steer technology in a different direction is closing, I would argue, every day. So a brief bit of my bio that Jeff left out, which might be incongruous to other things about me that you may or may not notice. I was on Wall Street for like 10 seconds at the beginning of my career. And one of the critical concepts I remember from my time in finance is this idea of bleeding delta. Delta refers to the value of an option, or is a part of a value of an option. As an option approaches expiry, it loses value because there's less opportunity for it to hit its mark. Similarly, when we think about building a technology ecosystem that actually helps people live prosperous, healthy, dignified lives, we are bleeding delta. Every day, power becomes more centralized, systems become more ingrained, social problems compound, become more gnarly and wicked to entangle. So every dollar that's on the sidelines is losing its ability every day to actually impact change. And so when we thought about this session, the idea of putting at least or this, one order of magnitude on thinking about responsible innovation felt critical. Right? We need to be thinking at the scale that the current technology ecosystem plays at, if this is a set of things that we care about. Which is why I'm super excited to be in conversation with my dear friend and collaborator, Camille Canon, who is one of the most, I think, thoughtful people when it comes to deploying capital in values-driven ways. And so I'm going to kick it to Camille to share a bit more about what she's up to.
Hi. Thanks, Lyel. It is kind of hard to follow, Lyel, because I feel like you do visionary incredibly well, and now I'm going to come with problems. I'm very sorry. When we were prepping for the session, I was like, what does responsible mean, and what does impact mean in this context? And I think it's important to note something about technology, and part of the reason why our hands go up with 1 to 3s around the societal impact of tech. And that's because the business model of technology kind of does one of two things. It either drives down labor costs or it drives up attention extraction. We actually haven't cracked a different kind of business model for scalable platforms that don't do one of those two things. And so there's the part of responsible tech that is the technology itself responsible? Are the algorithms responsible? Are we building it in responsible ways? This has become an ever-pressing conversation in the face of AGI. But there's another part of responsible, which is who is it responsible to? And are we building businesses that can actually deliver responsibly to the public good? The other problem, is the systems, the frameworks, the models, the term sheets, the legalese of how we invest in technology isn't really aligned with any other outcomes other than one of those two business models, right? We invest in conventional venture capital funds. We deploy capital into startups on terms that have a certain logic inscribed into them. And we don't have a lot of experiments into how we would do that differently, either from a capital aggregation perspective or from the perspective of what does it actually look like to deploy capital into startups that are trying to do two things simultaneously: build sustainable, profit-generating models and deliver on the public good in a sustainable way. And I think that those two challenges are what brought Lyel and me together. About a year ago, we've celebrated our anniversary of being in collaboration with each other. Lyel, now I get to say nice things about you. Lyel, prior to us crossing paths, had been on a multi-year journey, both as a founder in tech and as someone who is a natural community organizer, of connecting with founders who are in their roles as founders building businesses, grappling with these challenges, and is launching a program and a community and an investment vehicle to support founders who want to build businesses in different ways. And I come to this as an entrepreneur in residence with Jonathan Soros' family office, where our mandate is to develop new capital structures and vehicles for having multiple forms of values being coded into how we consider returns. So, and that can be deployed alongside conventional capital. So it's sort of impact-ish. We also invest in non-impact businesses according to this thesis. And I think in our collaboration is really to try to figure out the question of the session. Like, how do we unlock $10 billion in the next decade towards businesses that are trying to leverage technology to deliver to the public good? Oh, sorry. I have a question for you.
Yeah.
What, in your view, of the businesses, the startups that you are, I don't know if that's on.
Is this on? Is this on? Okay, thank you.
Of the founders who you are working with and supporting at the moment, how do you think about and define the responsible part of what they are doing?
Yeah, that seems like an important place to start. Like, responsible to whom and to what, right? And I think one of the challenges of responsible tech versus traditional models that support strict shareholder primacy in its strictest sense, is people have a range of values, and that's not an easily standardizable question, right? And so in my work with founders, generally venture-backed founders, the starting place is typically twofold. One, it's getting folks to acknowledge what everyone here in this room just did, which is there's something about what's happening right now that just doesn't feel good, right? And what's really interesting about this moment is like the distance between the harms and folks has like collapsed. So 10 or 15 years ago, people like Safia Noble were calling this out, and generally, right, the harms of I think the current tech ecosystem kind of disproportionately affected marginalized folks that were historically excluded in all types of ways. And now that is collapsing, right? Like, if you have kids, you've noticed like the twin loneliness and mental health epidemic. If you live in Western or any kind of society, you've noticed kind of the collapse of the integrity of the information ecosystem. If you've probably noticed like the growing surface area for fraud and deepfake, and so for everyday people, the prospect of turnkey surveillance state and mass unemployment and civil unrest, right? Like, these are things that everyone feels. And so the first step, I guess, is when I connect with folks, is like getting to acknowledge that we feel like we could do something better broadly. And then the second piece is kind of suggesting that, okay, when we create technology, we're not just creating value for users or shareholders. We are creating a spread of value. We might be destroying it for some users or for some stakeholders, or extracting it from other stakeholders. And at least independent of our politics or our value system, can we agree that that is likely to happen? And can we try to do an honest accounting of that value spread? And that provocation often, I think, liberates people in their sense of the type of value that they think that they have to create, and the way that they're able to express their values in their work. The richer kind of next step after kind of doing that accounting is, well, maybe we decide that this particular trade-off, this extraction or destruction is not something we're comfortable with, and we're going to do something else. Then you could think about, well, there's that trade-off, but we feel like We have to do it, but maybe there's a mitigation strategy we could take, and maybe that mitigation strategy can actually drive long-term business value by making a product more accessible or resilient or holistic or inclusive. And so a lot of our work, which it's fun to be in partnership with you because you think about this on the capital side, but it's about helping people build not just technology, but business models and organizations that can support those business models that think really holistically about the incentives that they're creating. I don't know. I wouldn't call myself optimistic, but the part of me that has a lot of fun and is energized is the good bit of news is I see it in my kids every day at MIT, and I see it in my founder community. People want to build differently. We just need the capital to support them.
Yeah, I think we didn't talk about this, but I think we should answer the question of what we think is necessary to unlock $10 billion. Because I think you're touching on something important, right? Which is there is a bunch of interest from people, and I'm sure that some of the founders who raised their hands at the beginning of the session will identify with this. There are people who want to build responsibly today, and I would imagine from a decade of working with founders, you hit some roadblocks. And those roadblocks are structural. Those roadblocks are from a capital perspective. They're governance. Yes, there's the business model and the operational side, but there's a lot of structural support that is lacking to make that responsibility realizable in the world. But there's also the part of founders needing community and support amongst themselves, right?
Yes, but I think the hard stop continues to be on the capital side. I think we need models that can allow for deeper experimentation and different return profiles than kind of the growth at all costs kind of traditional venture expectations. And that's something that you're innovating on and playing with.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I feel like I say repeatedly is just we need more capital that is risk willing and not just in a conventional venture way. We need capital that is willing to experiment with different business models, to experiment with different forms of value creation. And we kind of need it now. There's a time part of this that I've sat in SOCAP for many years, and it's we got to do this. There is a pressing need to demonstrate what successful alternatives look like in the market. And I often think of the work that we're doing as trying to build the plumbing to connect capital with founders and operators who already, I feel like they're 10 steps ahead of where asset holders are. There's just this missing infrastructural link. And in many ways, particularly given that we operate within the space of family offices who have the flexibility to deploy capital in innovative ways, the part of the work that I think that is necessary is really cultural and social in nature, which is, can you think about what returns look like and what kind of value you want to generate in the world with the private power under your remit, beyond just the buckets of here's philanthropy and here's my investment portfolio.
And I think kind of speaking to the lovely diversity of SOCAP, and that exists even in this room, it's clearly it's an ecosystem, it's a systems level problem. And we are going to invite you all shortly to think about where in this space you can play as capital holders, thinking about how you can kind of take on more risk, or our sponsor Siegel Family Endowment, I think play with kind of the border of for-profit and nonprofit investments. If you're a founder innovating on new business models that can achieve some type of scale, but aligns incentives so that it's the impact is embedded in your economic scale. If you're in media, you think about the types of stories that you tell and the types of heroes that we hold up. So I think very shortly we're going to invite folks to think about where I think in the ecosystem, the broader ecosystem, they could play on such an urgent problem.
Before we do that, we wanted to open up the space to see if there were any questions or comments.
I'm an educator. I will call on someone. There we go.
Yeah, I mean, this might come off as a little simplistic. I mean, how much of this ultimately is better solved by regulation rather than hoping for sort of inspired investors and inspired founders? I'm not saying it's not an important place for that, but I mean, a whole lot of this, if you sort of took it out of the tech space, would sort of sit with sort of the public sector to sort of protect against these harms that are tough for any individual actor to get.
It's a great question. I think that you're right. Like, there's unquestionably the role of policy in addressing the harms that we're talking about. And I think we have 3 decades of evidence that tech policy has been insufficient and too slow and inept at navigating known harms. And so, do I wish that we had a situation where the policy was covering this? Absolutely. Am I also desirous of having multiple tools in our toolkit to try to both generate value and address harm? Yes. Like, you are correct. And I wish that you were right in reality too.
I'd also say, I mean, as an entrepreneur, my instinct is to look for leverage, right? I look for leverage and wedges, and I see the extraordinary, like, passion of my kids, my unbelievably talented MIT students who freaking want something different. And then I think about my broader founder community, even people who went through like YC, who took traditional venture funding, who built giant technology businesses and are like thinking about kind of what have they wrought, or the kind of broader emptiness of that pursuit. They feel like they got sold a bill of goods. And so for me, it's like, well, there's an asset here. Like, the thing that drives me is like there's tremendous demand from really talented people to build something different. And so there's a type of low-hanging, I think it's a low-hanging fruit. And regulatory interventions are absolutely necessary. I'd concur, especially increasingly seeing how the tech community has become increasingly skilled at, let's say, interacting with the public sector. Like, I think it's a critical piece, but there's an asset here that I think we can take advantage of. And was there a question over there? Was it? And sorry, what was your name?
No, Nathaniel.
Hey, Nathaniel. Thanks, Nathaniel. And sorry, can you just say your name?
In greed, and and you sort of alluded to it as well. How do you think we can really motivate a cultural shift in terms of maximizing for well-being versus just profits, right? Because I think, to me, that's the core issue. I've pitched to 100 founders, pitched to 100 funders. I've done these different things, and I think that there is the ARR versus the consulting revenue versus who really needs the support. Like, how do we encourage that? Because I think that will really money follows the will, and if it's not in the hearts of people outside of policies, it's not going to be sustainable. So how do you think we can go forward?
Either way. Thank you, Whitney, for an easy one. I guess I fall back again on this disposition that I see in the young people that I'm around, who have been, I think, hurt deeply by kind of the last 20 years of kind of taking this to an extreme, to its extreme. and I see the desire to build more holistically in them. I don't think we have the infrastructure, I guess to your point, in the broader technology ecosystem to absorb or let alone nurture those instincts. And I think there's something of an asymmetry here between, I think, talent. I see it in the talent. I think society broadly, less than a third of American adults are optimistic about the tech AI future, according to like the most recent Edelman poll, and it's bipartisan. One of the few things that are bipartisan. But capital continues to behave in the same way, and so largely, with some notable exceptions. And so, I think there's an asymmetry there. I don't know that. I do. My community of founders and students, I feel like, are motivated by things much richer than just trying to accumulate. I think that the challenge from my perspective is, well, how to unlock the capital that can nurture those instincts and give them the capital infrastructure to support growing them.
Yeah, I think it's a long road. I think that there's, we created the most powerful system in the world to be completely values agnostic. And that is a really, really difficult thing to change because it requires people realizing that they're living in a values agnostic world. It requires them thinking about what else they value beyond money and having an identity that supports that, as well as legal systems and infrastructure that create incentives for everyone in the system, not just the individual wealth holder, but their advisors and their money managers and their, on and on and on. Like the elaborate complexity of wealth preservation is a whole thing that is connected to your question that also needs changing. I do think that there is great power in making the tangential visible for people, like creating examples of how money and value can move in different ways is inspirational and shakes how people understand what's possible. And that's not easy to do, but it is possible to do. And then I think the last part of this is like never let a good crisis go to waste. Like we are in a crisis moment where the question of what the role is of private power in the public good has never been more critical. And it has never been more fraught because you have decades of philanthropy that is now in, privately at least, a self-reflection moment of, are we doing this right? Are we actually generating the value that we intended to generate? And is this working? And I think that is like, do I wish we were in crisis? No. But do I think that like we all need to leverage this time and opportunity to push the conversation past the conversation that we have been having for a while? Yes. So I don't feel like that's a great answer. I wish I could be like, here's the 3-step process to changing wealth in America. Like, I don't have that. But I do think that this is my work, is the answer to this question. And we are trying through multiple different tools and intervention points to create the kind of systemic change that will make it easy for people to answer that question differently. You're the educator.
Should I? Yeah, and if you could just say your name and affiliation, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. Yeah.
I have a foundation. We do research on collective cognition, and we apply it to conservation. I was actually a student at MIT when they dissolved the Systems Center, the Enterprise Engineering Systems Division, because it didn't sell. Because it was the part of the university that had less investment. Professors were incentivized to work for a department, finding specific solutions. Like, my question is, I hear the question around systems. We need different plumbing, but it's really hard to get money for that part of the story. We need an application, the so what. In our case, is the conservation, right? We can apply the science of systems to that, but how do you think we can make people, because I also think the people who decide where to put the money don't know the gap. The system science is very complicated. And so people don't know that that is a problem. And there are a lot of consultants and a lot of smoke solutions and a lot of programs that say that they have the solutions around that. So how do you put the money on the systems and not in the solutions and not the so what?
Camille, can I put you on the? I think you're.
Can I ask you a follow-up question, just because I want to make sure I'm understanding you? What do you think? What's the missing piece for you in the funding? What do you want to see funded?
Well, I think that system science needs investment in the science of it, in the philosophy of it, in the math, in the understanding of what it really means. The question is always, but how do you apply it? How do you apply it to airport control systems or hospitals or food distribution or whatever you want to apply? And so we are skipping a step, because if you ask me to apply it, I will use what is already available instead of pushing what needs to be available, which is not there.
Right. You're basically asking the question of how do you get somebody or a group of people to fund the horizontal infrastructure that benefits everyone. I don't know. I'm going to be honest with you. I, have run a systems nonprofit. I couldn't figure out how to answer this question. I turned to the side of capital in part in response to the fact that without great luck and the fortune of crossing paths with someone with resources who happens to be interested in the same thing, the market of philanthropy makes the market of what you are trying to create very, very difficult. These are easy questions.
I'm Larry Reed. I work with Thrive Lights, and we provide a tool for measuring and motivating thriving in communities and in workplaces. I just want to push back a bit on putting our faith in the idealism of the young people coming up today, because the adults who are creating the crisis that we have now were the young people we thought would change future for the better a generation ago. And I remember some statistic about people going into Harvard Law School, 70% of them wanted to go into public service law when they started, and 90% of them go into corporate law when they leave. So there's something in our system that sucks that idealism out of people. And how do we create the alternatives that have the same drawing power as the system we have now?
Yeah, I think that's the right diagnosis, right? We're not apart, right? I think that young people come in with an idealism. I don't know. I think what's interesting about the last few years, they're not idealistic. Actually, they're hurt. They're hurting bad, which I think is a different and maybe more interesting motivator than idealism. But the problem remains the same, right? There isn't the infrastructure to absorb 90% of law students who want to serve and want to do public service, just like there isn't infrastructure in the technology ecosystem to absorb, let alone nurture, the instincts of my undergrad computer science students. I think what I'd proffer is a meaningful intervention, though, is there's that is an asset that I don't want to lose, and I think I do see growing pockets of experimentation. It seems like a third of the folks in here are founders, probably building social enterprises that push on new modes of financing and incentives and expectations around return and how that bakes into the theory of change and product market fit and so that's the wedge we're interested in breaking open. Thanks for that. All the way in the back.
Hi, my name is Alexis. I'm with Upwardly Global, and we're looking at the expansiveness of systems change with the workforce development lens. One of the things that we're encountering is the implementation of technology at scale provides us with a huge change management hurdle. And I'm wondering what you're seeing with respect to how folks are balancing that in this race to fund these tech transformations, but also understanding the human components of change management and how do we push the things forward after the funding comes, or even outline what the possibilities are with respect to managing that.
Another easy one. I'll say right now on that front, I mean, to Camille's point earlier, right, like even before the last few years, technology companies' kind of default business model has been around lowering labor costs, and that is now on hyperdrive, right? Like hyperdrive. There are just some interesting studies out today that seem contentious that it's maybe actually happening faster than people think, but also maybe folks are kind of job loss, but folks are maybe now attributing it to other things in the economy that we can't necessarily see. All that's to say is, you know, we're in a, I think for folks bringing technology into their organizations at this point, it's very much kind of in between a rock and a hard place. It feels like a prisoner's dilemma in some ways because it is. If you don't use it, you get left behind. If you do use it, there are a range of broader consequences. If you do use it, how do you do it ethically, sustainably, if you care about human beings and providing them sustainable livelihoods? I don't have a good answer for you. This is sort of a new frontier in the responsible innovation conversation. I think the fact that it's happening so quickly. There are a couple of really great organizations that think about this, that are trying to get out in front from a knowledge basis, at least, that could be worth exploring. Think about Data and Society in New York, Tequity here in the Bay. My former colleague, Dr. Wilneda Negron, is coming out with a book, Tech to the Rescue, from Santiago Torres, right here in the front row. So I don't have a good answer for you right now. I would say the reason, though, again, kind of that this broader conversation feels like an imperative is because there is still I think two things are true, and then I think we'd like to break folks out. One is, two things are true at the same time. One, I see concretely a growing premium for companies that care broadly about the set of consequences of the things that they put into the world. Talent attraction and retention, trust and consumer loyalty, which leads to like lower churn, lower cost of customer acquisition, higher lifetime value, higher contract win rates. Like all those are real. Maybe getting ahead of kind of regulatory issues and by building social capital, helping prevent kind of disasters that cost people time and money and reputation down the line, which is something that founders care deeply about. And so that is true. The growing premium is there. Responsible innovation, in some contexts, is a business imperative. There's also contexts in which it is not. Right? There are plenty of actors who don't care about these things, who are making money hand over fist, and that will continue to be true. Because if you don't care what you run over, you can run as fast as you want, right? But I think it brings back to kind of Camille's essential point, is like, we need more stories, more examples of it, of people realizing like, oh, actually now I have a choice. I do have a choice. I don't have to do it like this. And if I have any optimism at all, it is that I do think like the majority of the people, my founder friends, even venture-backed founder friends, undergrad computer science students, would choose door number 2 if they knew they had the choice. They just don't know they had the choice. So I think our this is participatory. We are solving it. We are solving it, not we. We are solving it. So we'd love to break you out for a few minutes with a couple of prompts.
Yes, prompt 1 is, what is your role in your current position in the world in contributing to this change? And 2, what is the challenge that you face within that role to contributing the change you think you are actually best suited to change?
Yeah, something interesting that your partner said. Who would like to share? Jackie?
Hi, I'm Jackie. I am founder of Clearwater Global. We do intelligence impact intelligence. On the ground, one of the things that for question number 1 was for what is our role? It was less specific to me as a person, and my role is to stop asking permission. Because what we keep doing is we keep saying, well, there's no regulation for this. There's no guideline for this. Well, yes, there's not. So we have to create it. And so, do I not carry? yell into this. And I think that was where we were going, is like, we all as a group need to stop asking permission because it's not going to come. And so we have to do it ourselves. So I would say my role is no longer asking permission to do this stuff, and actually, yes, there's probably not a way to sell AI. We're creating it. There's probably not a way to really get founder or people capital to founders, because we need to create that role. And so that is my role, to stop asking permission.
Love that. Thank you, Jackie. Something else, something interesting someone's partner said?
Hi, this is Santiago Torres, Tech to the Rescue, regarding how to bring technology to social and environmental impact organizations in a thoughtful and, let's say, empathical way. We can help you out with that. And basically, another thing that we were discussing is maybe the crisis of this whole development aid system can help us, and the growth of these new technologies can help us rethink the way we bring along new players, especially those actors who are living those problems that we are trying to solve, right? We sometimes coexist with those problems from 9 to 5, as it is part of our job. But the communities, they live these problems, and what AI can do is sometimes enable them to be active in the design of solutions, and it can level up the field. So for us, that's the actual challenge right now, to rethink that system without so many middle people, right, in a way, and rethink how we design our value proposition and bring those voices in.
Thank you, Santiago. Something interesting that your partner said? Anyone? I heard so many interesting things, so I want do folks the privilege of sharing. Yeah, in the back.
Hi, my name is Chris G. I'm with Giant Panda. We do regional development. My role there is to help build smart city infrastructure in developing countries.
Cool.
And this is my little group here. And what we talked about is the need for ecosystem building. For instance, we are building a lot of AI solutions and blockchain solutions to deploy in developing communities. But what we need is to build ecosystems, because there's so many different kinds of disparate solutions out there, and we need some kind of coordination amongst ourselves so that we can actually help maximize this value. Because unlike in developed countries where technology is just like, you put it out onto your app store, you can just grab it anytime you want. In developing countries, you really need this kind of coordination to like cross-pollinate and generate value, multiply value.
And what is standing in the way of that coordination?
Right now, I think it's a lack of data literacy, which is like the ability to make arguments with data and the ability to gain value from data, which in developing countries, it's still a new thing, right? It's not just, and then of course access to data-driven systems and all this kind of stuff. But I mean, I don't know. Do you have?
Oh, thank you for just handing me the mic, Astrid Schultz. I'll be here all day. One thing that gets in the way is, as I like to joke with our company, Amalaria, impact investors don't understand tech, and tech investors don't care about impact. That's beginning to change a little bit. And the other thing that gets in the way is that we've all learned to build venture-funded companies. There are over 150 impact-related tech platforms out there that were all built in the sort of guise of Silicon Valley type companies, because we were all told, I have been told by an impact investing officer at the MacArthur Foundation that she can invest in us when we have $1 million in ARR. But if I have $1 million in ARR, I don't need impact investment anymore, right? So those are the structural impediments. And so one of the opportunities is, I think our group adopted the slogan, always be cooperating. So we actually just transacted with each other and have plans to follow up.
Yeah, I
highly recommend you do the same. Always be transacting.
I love a transaction. Also, we're lucky to have, for folks that don't know, Aster started Zebras Unite, which I think was a really meaningful example that gave folks a lot of permission to think more broadly about what it could mean to create value through corporate vehicles. So thank you for your work there. We have time for maybe one more, something interesting that your partner said. Yeah, Amy. Do we have a mic? Oh.
Hi, Amy Cortez with Impact Alpha. We had a pretty big group, and honestly, there were so many interesting things, but I just want to single out one, and that was Purpose Foundation. And one of the things you said that I'd love to hear more about is about alternative ownership models when we're talking about tech and AI, and I think that's very important, especially given, you know, where the ownership lies right now, right, and where it's all headed. So hope to hear more about that.
Love an ownership model provocation. For folks interested in ownership things, a bunch of great resources, I guess. Maybe, is there a way to like send a general follow-up to this panel? There is? Okay, so we can send some resources. Do you want to talk a little bit about ownership things?
Sure. I think that within the context of this, you were probably talking about steward ownership and how to raise capital in ways that align. Steward ownership is a concept of keeping businesses decommodified so that they aren't sold for perpetually for profit extraction, and that they are governed by people who are connected to the mission, whether that be founders. In some cases, it gets into really cool multi-stakeholder governance models. Lily on Wednesday, I don't know what time, is doing a panel on organically grown company, which is one of the largest examples in the US that is governed by 5 different stakeholders. It's very cool. But I would imagine the conversation that you are having around technology is, how are you going to govern the value that is generated, and how do you build your business as a founder in a way that aligns with whatever your mission or intent is, so that even if you build a great business, it then doesn't get sold to financial owners who only care about extracting as much value out of it as possible. And yeah, my plug is for Lily's session.
So I guess we have time for one, maybe two more. Anyone else? Something interesting your partner said? Or if you just want to, you can share about yourself too.
Astrid.
Relates to what we're just talking about regarding ownership. I'm curious, have you come across, or what's the sort of the state of play now with capital in the system that facilitates the exit or the conversion of venture-funded companies? Because I'm getting more interest in that prospect, and I'm a little bit daunted by how much capital we're going to have to raise to flip some companies. And years ago, we actually tried to put together a consortium to buy Meetup and exit it to community. And the amount of capital that would be required to convert some existing tech platforms is horrendous, because thank you, VCM. So I'm just curious, are there any billionaires lurking in your networks? And then the other thing I was going to raise is on the topic of all the impact investing and related platforms, I think there may be an opportunity to join together and sort of create a gigantic tech co-op around these ideas, and join forces now that our individual SaaS models are not working, which some of us are learning the hard way 10 years or so in. Is there an opportunity to convert ourselves into a more mutualistic ownership structure to help all of us scale?
I think on the capital side, it is no different in my experience from Purpose 5 years ago, in that there are a lot of companies that are facing the question of how to exit in an alternative way. And it's especially difficult in the tech space because the gap between the valuation, the fair market value, and the free cash flow that's actually available in the business, that delta is really, really hard to navigate. And so even if you have older, vintage funds from big venture capitalists who basically have written off the investment, from a legal and tax and practical perspective, you face a very big hurdle in how to construct the conversion, because in these models that we're all referring to, think of it as like the equity structure sits somewhere between debt and equity, where the shares are basically bought back from investors through free cash flow, and that's really hard to do. I every 6 months hear of a big company that somebody's trying to take private or create an alternative exit. I have yet to see any of them pan out. I think that it is a really big plug for the long-term stock exchange, finally materializing into something. I think that intervention point was the right intervention point that has not yet fulfilled its promise.
Now we're at time.
Now we're at time. You did it.
We did it. We did it. Well, I guess I have. Do you have any final thoughts? I have one.
Oh, shoot.
As always with SOCAP, just grateful for the span of perspectives and experiences in this room, and thank you all for sharing with each other and sharing us your thoughtfulness and drive. And what I'd say, I'd leave you with, had a mentor recently share something that really stuck with me when I was feeling also maybe a bit dejected and thinking about kind of the adequacy of some of the interventions that we're thinking about. And she is very well put together, older woman who I feel like we should just give the keys to more broadly. But she, as I started to get just a little, she heard probably my voice, just a tinge of dejection, and she looked at me, and she put her finger in my face, and she said, "They want you to think that we don't all have our oars and that we're not all rowing. Keep fucking rowing."
Yes.
So that is what I leave to you. You all have your oars. Keep fucking rowing.